Thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat with me. I'm super excited about this. Um, yeah, so I really appreciate it. So I've got Sam here, right?
Yeah, so I'm Sam Deats. I'm Adam Deats.
And I'm Spencer Wan.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I reported the premiere at Anime Expo. Gosh, it's been like a month now already. I can't believe it. And just really appreciate the chance to get to talk to you guys today. So we'll kick it off. I'm going to hand it over to you, Sam. But by most accounts, you have been planning for this project for quite some time. What is it about the Castlevania universe that made you so interested in initially seeing an animated version come to life? I know you recently did an interview with IO9 and you were talking about this direct to DVD project that was about 10 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
So since then, and then ultimately being able to take helm of the project, what is it about this universe that you keep coming back to?
Well, just to clarify, this was originally a project that was started by Kevin Coldy, one of the executive producers on it. He acquired the rights over 10 years ago from Konami, and that's where this all kind of started. I remember when I was, 10 years younger, actually hearing about it and being excited to see what came of it. But unfortunately, the project had to get put on hold just because the direct to DVD market wasn't going so well at the time, and wasn't until Netflix started doing stuff like their originals and whatnot that the idea came to revive it. But I wasn't brought on board until a few years ago when they actually got everything together and they were starting to make deals with Netflix and whatnot. So this was originally Fred Rader's project, and we went to them pitching ourselves to be the animation production studio on it. But I mean, I myself adore Castlevania. The whole reason that we went and aggressively tried to push for it was because me and my brother Adam here are huge fans of the series. We love the aesthetic. We love the characters and the setting, and we just thought that this would translate extremely well to an animated series, and wanted to have our hands on it.
Yeah, and so that's when basically Adam, you guys you came along as part of the package, right? You were both kind of on it at the same time then, or did you come into it later in the project, Adam?
So I actually came in late as assistant director, a little bit later. Sam and the producers snagged the deal, and then after the fact, Sam asked me to be assistant director, largely just because Sam and I's sensibilities are very similar, and I am like kind of the massive, gross Castlevania nerd of the project.
Okay.
Yeah. In the series,
yeah,
literally.
Real gross.
Yeah, no, it's awful. And so I even remember like the same deal where I saw the announcement 10 years ago too, and I was writing video game strategy guides for Brady Games at the time, and I was sitting there, and this was around the time when I was actually trying to get out of that business and get into animation. And I was sitting in my chair at home working on that, going, "Man, I sure wish I could be on that project." 10 years later.
Yeah. Jump in a time machine. Here you are.
Yeah, and like on top of that, I had kind of built a post-production style here at the studio that was very anime influenced. And really early on, it seemed like we were going to be going an anime style route just because it made sense for the series, given its roots.
Yeah, just so you know, Adam has been working at Powerhouse for how long? Been here, like 7, 8 years?
It's about 8 years now.
Yeah, so he had already been here for a long time. Had become a leader at the studio and everything. And given his his background as a creative and his background with the love of the series, it was an obvious choice to get Adam to jump in as the assistant director.
Awesome. His background as being grossly enamored by the Castlevania series, having played like every game ever.
Yeah, and so I've been a post-production supervisor for a while in terms of compositing. So,
yeah, all of those beautiful effects and lighting and particles and the final look is really what Adam did. He took all those assets that we received from the animation and brought it together, looking like the magic that it is.
Awesome. So this one's for all of you. One of the most striking things about the series is just how well received it has been. So it was on IMDb. It was on the most popular shows there for a couple weeks following its release, which was amazing. I think it topped out at like number 3 or number 2, right? It was really high up there. And then not just by fans of the series, but also by a larger audience, right? So my wife, for example, she doesn't really play Castlevania. Yeah, she doesn't play Castlevania. She hardly gets into the video game stuff at all. But I came home from Anime Expo raving like a lunatic about this show. I'm like, oh my God, it's so amazing. And she's like, all right, I'll check this out. I'll indulge you. And we watched it together and she loved it, which was awesome. And it's a recurring theme. Like I see in a lot of like people on Twitter, like, I don't usually watch this sort of thing. And I loved it. So it's one thing to create a faithful adaptation that would satisfy the fans and the base. And it's another to kind of bridge that gap and bring people over who aren't used to that series or used to enjoying that kind of content. What do you think it is about Castlevania, or what was your thought process in making it that you think helped to bridge that gap and bring those people over?
Did you have some too? Did you have some too?
I got some too, yeah. I think it's just worth mentioning that I have actually, before starting work on this series, I'd never played any of the Castlevania games. My only exposure to Castlevania had been seeing some box art at GameStop once when I was a teenager and noticing that it was the same artist as Death Note.
Yeah.
So for me, throughout this entire series, I didn't know most of these references. I didn't know these characters and like where they were coming from. So I might have been the only real person on it with fresh eyes. And so while we were creating this thing, whenever I would give input, I was only concerned with making something good. And I left the actual, like, the fan-oriented stuff, like references and whether something was following the lore closely enough. That was these guys. I just sat there and said things like, this doesn't make sense, or hey, that guy's shoulder is too close to that wall.
Yeah,
this would be cool. And I think that's what Spencer said was a good way to put it, is that the number one goal is to just make something good. So making sure that things were that we had endearing characters, that we had an interesting story with some level of thematic arcs that was relatable to some degree, something that it isn't lost in some complex lore from the games or anything. It's really about just making a relatable story.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that should be attributed to Warren Ellis. I mean, he's even said in multiple interviews already that his whole goal was to make something that many people could watch and not just fans, right?
Right.
So, and that hope, it sounds like, and it seems like that's worked. It's paid off.
I had forgotten that Warren hadn't played these games either when he was writing the scripts.
He was a Google search master.
He's like, who's this Alucard guy?
He's done an incredible job based on that. Like, for literally some just his games, he's hit a lot of the important marks.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like little things that I didn't even know about. Characters like some little offshoot manga stuff that he somehow scraped together to find little story elements, and those are actually in this stuff. And I think that Warren really just did a great job of finding those things, figuring out what works, and then figuring out what needed to be adjusted to work for everyone instead of just fans. And the other thing is that Castlevania itself is a property that it pulls from a lot of familiar
Yeah, it's
familiar
basically
stuff.
a Japanese Bram Stoker's. Let's be fair, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So like that's like it's easy to bridge that gap for that reason. Everybody loves vampire stuff. I mean, people are not going to stop liking vampire stuff tomorrow.
Well, you know,
Yeah, the universal story of man meets vampire, man kills vampire, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Twilight's still so wrong, you know.
And so we're kind of bleeding over into this. This question was going to be a little bit later, but I think it's a good time for it. So I know Warren isn't here, but obviously you read the script, and this characterization of Trevor and the others is obviously very unique and very compelling. But the game that it's based on, Castlevania 3, this was long before voiceover. This was long before in-game movies and things like that. And so when you saw these characterizations from Warren, like what were some of your initial reactions? Were there ever any concerns about the way that these characters were brought to life, or were you just like reading it like, oh yeah, this makes sense?
I mean, obviously one of the nice things about pulling from an NES title is that there's a lot of room to build on what these characters are like without having to worry about the handful of pixels that made up the characters and
Right,
what were like and all that stuff. Obviously, some of the characters like Alucard and Trevor appeared in later games with a certain look and feel to their personalities and everything. And I think that Warren did a nice job of kind of looking at those characters and how to make them endearing and interesting and fun to watch on screen without like completely tossing stuff out. I mean, I think Alucard is a good adaptation of his character from from Symphony of the Night without completely losing the feel of that. Along with our efforts with his design. Trevor obviously is a bit different from the his Curse of Darkness version, but given I think that was a smart choice in terms of his character arc, and to have him grow into the hero rather than starting out the hero was much more compelling than just jumping straight into heroism.
Yeah, and that's important too. Is the arc of it? Like, I've already heard from certain people, even Spencer, for example, who don't like Trevor that much right now. But that is part of the arc. He's not a perfect person right now, but hopefully we're going to start seeing better from him soon.
He's all right by episode 3, but I remember in those earlier episodes I was really trying to play up like how much of a douche he was.
You don't have to play it up too much. I mean, like it's kind of natural.
Right. I made this drawing of him with what I called douche hands, but it got lost in translation into the animation layer. That was really disappointing.
He's supposed to be kind of that snarky asshole archetype, and I kind of figured that people were gonna end up enjoying that. I mean, that's kind of a character type that tends to go over well with audiences.
On that same note, like when we started this project, two of my favorite like anime characters of all time are like Spike Spiegel and Osamu Dyson from Lacrosse Plus.
Uh-huh.
This is a really nerd like angle to go at, but like both of those characters I wanted Trevor to be, and luckily with the voice acting and whatnot, he nailed it. Armitage nailed that archetype.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean it's Armitage, and particularly Graham McTavish as Dracula. I mean, like as soon as he opened his mouth and the first lines came out, like in the room, like, and again, I wish that you guys were there at least at Anime Expo, because like I was like kind of looking around and people were like looking at each other like, oh my God, he sounds amazing. Like it was really cool to see, and they just did such a fantastic job bringing those characters to life with their wonderful voices.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to Richard Armitage for we got him kind of late in the game, and he came in and did his recording of every episode in one long rolling session.
Whoa,
and,
really?
Yeah,
insane.
It was I could kind of tell towards the end that he's starting to fade a little bit. I felt so bad, but I I appreciate it so much because it saved our asses.
Yeah, like that one line that you had him read a few times where he's talking to Sypha and he just goes, Sypha! And you're like Richard, Sypha's standing right next to you.
Oh man. Yeah,
And Alejandra played Cypher. She did a great job as well. Like Cypher's one of my favorite characters because she's just like she's just got a personality that really like lights up the room, so to speak.
Yeah,
Well, she's also a lot different than what we were expecting to.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, for
We
sure.
talked about that a little bit in the other interview, about how Sypha didn't make sense for her to be part of the church, and like the different characterizations, like how she's kind of changed going into the animated series, and I agree. I think that it makes a lot more sense, the character that she became. And yeah, Alejandro did a fantastic job, as like really that really the voice talent just in general, like everyone from Dracula to the pastor and everyone, all fantastic.
Yeah, I got to give props to the casting director Meredith Lane. I mean, she found a great group of people and made my life a lot easier. I mean, every time we were in those recordings, I didn't have to say a whole lot. They just they figured out how they needed to deliver their lines and knocked it out of the park without me having to do a whole lot.
Yeah. So there's a lot of discussion about the length of the series, like on Twitter and just in general. Mostly in a good way. Like they people enjoy that they were just kind of like consume it, but there's also a lot of people, Netflix consumers, that aren't used to a 4-episode, 30-minute episode season on Netflix. They're used to House of Cards. They're used to 13 1-hour episodes or whatever it is. Where did the length come from? Was it the result of limited resources? Was this a creative choice? Was this sort of like the vision, like we're going to make this sort of project here in this length? How did that come to be?
Well, I mean, honestly speaking, the producers came to us with that length. They had worked out what they wanted to do right off the bat, and that's what they came to us with. So, it wasn't really a decision on our part. It was something that they kind of worked out with Netflix. And I think that it's probably in part due to the fact that, the scripts that Warren Ellis had written about 10 years ago for the direct DVDs, they were already done. And Warren went and made some adjustments to them, cleaned some things up, and then tweaked them for an episodic format. But that stuff was done, and so we could pretty much just go straight into production with those scripts instead of being held up to wait for anything else. I don't know if that was part of the decision, but it certainly helps that we were able to just go right in as soon as contracts were signed instead of waiting on everything else.
Right. So, I mean, there was talk. So when people are saying that initially it was a movie and then broken up into four parts, was this direct to DVD? Like, is that what they're talking about? Basically, it was designed for this direct to DVD format as like a one-shot film, and then it was broken up into an episodic by Warren by looking at the script.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Yeah, they had that direct to DVD script kind of put together. Again, there was adjustments that were made. It was, I think, lengthened in some spots, and some scenes were completely rewritten and that sort of thing. The bones were in that original script that just happened to be a perfect fit for a 4-episode arc.
And now we get 8 episodes next season. That'll be great. And then 12, and then 20. No. So going over to Spencer. First of all, great work, fantastic work. It was a real treat to be in the room when they premiered that Cyclops battle. I remember Adi Shankar was like, "Who wants to see Trevor battle a Cyclops?" And everyone's like, "Yeah." And so like we got to watch that. And that scene I know you spend a lot of time on. In watching the series multiple times, I couldn't help but appreciate the detail, particularly during the action scenes. What are some of your like methods and techniques when you're putting these scenes together? Like, what's going through your mind, and what and you mentioned a lot of anime influences, but like, what are you thinking about when you're putting together these action sequences?
Well, specifically, I guess really what I'm thinking about is the way, like, the characters take up space on the screen. And that scene in particular, you know, I wanted the Cyclops to look a lot larger than Trevor, but I didn't want to have a lot of shots where it's just little tiny Trevor on the screen and then like big Cyclops. Oh, I'm not talking the right direction. Am I?
Oh, wait, what's that?
Oh no, sorry, I was just mumbling to everyone over here.
No, that's fine.
So I remember thinking about like the best way to get that across, and it ended up being a lot of back and forth shots instead of the characters taking up space on the screen at the same time.
Right.
It was a lot of like back and forth as if the Cyclops and Trevor are having a conversation. Especially toward the end, there are actually several shots that are reused. It's literally if you took those shots and swap them around, you would have one long shot that just cut back and forth between each other.
Mhm.
And that was one of the things I was thinking. I also I took a lot of influences from Japanese animators, like people like Itaka Nakamura and Norio Matsumoto, and the way they've sort of defined the style of action over there is rather than having a bunch of quick cuts where you know you can't see everything that's going on, but it's you know supposed to be quick and exciting. They'll often have very long, drawn out cuts that are very, very hard to draw, but you can see every little detail, and you can like I don't even know how to describe it.
Right. Yeah. I could definitely see that now that you're describing it, sort of the perspective that was forced during the Cyclops battle, like Trevor kind of standing much further away, you know, especially when he, removes the sword with the whip and like flings it in the air, you know, and does that really signature move where he jumps and he like kicks the hilt and lands it in the eye. Like the distance between them making it not so much where it's, you know, that huge Cyclops and tiny Trevor, but just sort of them kind of going back and forth, which again was fantastic to see and experience for the first time in a room full of people.
One of the things I really appreciate about Spencer's work and his animation style is that the way that he times things out and the way that things are paced, the audience is given a lot of chances to really read the motion and see what's happening, and I think that creates a great deal of impact. It also has a realism to it, which I think worked really, really well with the Castlevania show because everything feels. It doesn't have that kind of. Some anime goes very, very poppy and flashy and quick, and that's cool for certain shows like Dragon Ball Z and whatnot. But for something like this, where you want to feel like real stakes with actual human characters, I think that this approach was really perfect for the show.
It was really hard to figure out a way to make someone whip a sword into the air and then jump off the statue, backflip, and kick the sword across the room into someone else's eye. And still look like it could be happening.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was definitely part of the weight of it was like, okay, like what's he doing? The sword's in he's getting, this is gonna happen. And like just sort of like a mounting realization that, yeah, these are all things that you can kind of piece together. It wasn't a moment of no way, right? That I think that really speaks volumes to like the way that style was executed, because we've seen shows where we're like, yeah, right, no way. Like it's cool to see, but we're like, that would never happen. Whereas in that particular moment, at that climactic moment, we were like, oh my gosh, he made it all happen, and it looked amazing. So again, that was just fantastic to see. Okay, whose idea was it for the yo-yo trick during the Alucard fight? Because the whip technique when he like redirects it in midair is insane. I like watch that scene like 5 times a week right now.
So basically, Sam boarded that sequence, and it was already decided that Trevor would redirect the whip, but in the original drawings, he kind of just rips it and twists. And when I went to animate that sequence, I was talking with Sam, and I was like, I've been playing with a yo-yo. I've got like a really weird idea. What if he just slid the whip across his hand? And Sam was like, you can do whatever you want.
Literally, by the way, Spencer was totally playing with a yo-yo for weeks. I think that might have been the actual inspiration.
Right, like in the next episode, like Trevor's like, hey, I can walk the dog, like whatever. You're like, where did this come from? All right, cool. So Sam and Adam, you've successfully brought Castlevania to life. You're on the verge of creating season 2, and I asked this actually during the Q&A session of Addy, but I'd like to hear your response. So we've seen a lot of success on Netflix with the Marvel universe in particular, in creating this like larger universe and then creating shows that are within it. Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Daredevil and Jessica Jones, etc. And so do you see yourselves helping to bring to life other video game franchises as part of like a larger, say, video game universe series or whatever? And if so, what would you like to bring to life next?
That's like really hard.
Yeah.
First, I just want to say that we couldn't have done this without Spencer. It wasn't just us that brought this to life. Spencer also did an insane amount of boards on this thing, so really is a trio in that sense.
Yeah.
And in terms of what I would want, there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to work on. This is probably a really vague reference, but I loved Panzer Dragoon back in the day. I wouldn't mind doing a Panzer Dragoon show. I would love. I'm a big Street Fighter fan, so doing a Street Fighter animated project would be huge for me. I would love that. I would even be down for like Metroid or Streets of Rage, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, like Metroid is like big on my list just because it's one of my my favorite series and all that.
Yeah, there's definitely like some hype around that right now with Nintendo basically stealing E3 with a logo and some background music.
Right.
So that don't tease me. That would be super. That would be fantastic.
I mean, like this is all mostly just like dream project type of things.
Right. Yeah, on your wish list.
just for us, but
It's totally get back to Zelda.
Okay, I don't know how that could possibly happen, but a Zelda would be fun. And I love, I know with Spencer and me are simpatico on it, but Dark Souls or Bloodborne or something like that.
Yeah, it's just so.
Yes. There's a lot of obviously the series is Castlevania is pretty graphic and more adult and so the vibe is definitely very Berserk-esque. And I know you've probably seen some of those calls like, oh, like why didn't these guys do Berserk instead of what happened? But yeah, so I could definitely see Bloodborne. What was that?
I said, by the way, if they want us to do Berserk, I'd be into that. Sam and I are actually both really big Berserk fans, which is like a big influence for this show. So that would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I just reread the manga recently, so I'm a huge fan of that. And, I actually love what they did with the recent films.
The film, the redoing of the films was awesome. I really enjoyed those. But yeah, it's just a series.
Yeah. We don't have to go into it.
Yeah, we don't. So we'll wrap up. So the series has inspired some pretty awesome fan projects in response. Like I said, people are like, "Oh, dude, Berserk," things like that. Do you have any cool stories or swag that you've received from fans following the show's release, or anything like that?
Just a ton of amazing fan art.
Oh yeah, there's so much fan art.
It's flabbergasting amount. Like it's just really everywhere.
There's music videos and drawings and little animations. And,
one of the most impressive cosplay I saw was outside of the cosplays, which was actually pretty detailed. But there's one guy who did like a literal like recreation of like the show in 8-bit format with like old like Castlevania 3 sprites and stuff.
That thing was insane.
It was so much work put into this.
Man, I need to see that.
One guy, there was another guy too who did like this fake VHS like tape that was like with the show's late.
There was more than one.
Oh, there was more than one.
Yeah, I've seen multiple.
Yeah, and I put like the Powerhouse name on it and stuff. It was pretty impressive.
Like some really cool things like that. There is someone who has put together little plushies of the main cast, and I'm trying to get my hands on some of those.
Yeah, they're really. In a general sense, like the fan, like just outreach and whatnot, has like on more than one occasion brought tears to my eyes. It's been so energizing to see that sort of stuff. Like we really appreciate it. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, up until the release, I kind of thought, what if everyone hates it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like that's the trick. I mean, like I said, like one of the things that really impressed me about the series is like it's one thing to impress the base, right? Like, nerds are picky, and that sort of thing. And so, like creating, especially a universe as familiar and as beloved as Castlevania, to create that and do right by it. But then again, adding on top of that, like that you essentially created a universe that they love and they want to watch again and again, but also people are like, what's this, Super Nintendo that you got here? Like people who like have no idea what, really the video game world is about, to be drawn in and be like, oh yeah, that was pretty cool. Really impressive. So thank you guys again so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And congratulations again on a fantastic project. Cannot wait for season 2.
No problem, man.
We're working hard.
Yeah.